thank you, Professor Chong Byung-mo, for organizing this panel. So since you introduced me, I will not repeat, but yes, I'm teaching Korean art history in Paris. So I will just move on to my paper. So today I will talk about a category of painting, the ancestral shrine paintings. Yes.
지금 여기 여러분 여기 책상에 이거 하나 갖고 계시죠? 이거 햇셋 여기 보시면 1과 2에 조정이 되어 있는데 지식의 볼륨을 조정하면은 한국어 통역으로 들을 수 있습니다.
Yes. Yes. So I will talk about the ancestral shrine paintings of the Joseon period, known as the Sadangdo and also as Kammo Yeojedo. That means image to remember the ancestor as if he or she was still living. So these paintings are connected to Confucian style ancestor worship and are believed to have been used as a portable device to replace the ancestral shrine when the official was away from home and therefore could not perform the prescribed ancestral rite at the family shrine. So while their ritual function is known, the actual manner of use can only be speculated because we lack information about the manner of display and the setting of the ritual space. So the art historical study of this category of painting is in its infancy, as very little attention was paid until very recently in the late 2000s. So the shrine paintings cover a wide spectrum of interdisciplinary approaches, touching upon fields such as art history, religious studies, social and cultural history. So over 50 or so paintings have been discovered so far, most of which are kept in private collections, and that is why it is difficult to study these paintings. It is as yet unknown if they are family heirlooms or if they were acquired elsewhere. So this presentation will analyze various types of visual representations and will try to propose a chronological classification of the paintings based on the study of various recurring iconographical elements that evolve over time. The importance of the cosmological lore, best represented by the ancestral spirit tablet, will also be studied. So a general consensus holds that most of the surviving shrine paintings date to the late Joseon period, from the 18th to the 19th century. So these paintings raise the issue of their ritual use, their place and means of production. They were produced for a practical use, they were a substitute for the actual domestic shrine, and they constituted one of the ritual paraphernalia of ancestor worship along the altar setting, the incense table, and ritual vessels. So their date and place of production are unknown. So there is some historical background. So in the closing years of the Goryeo period, some Neo-Confucians advocated the dissemination of Confucian-style ancestor worship to counteract Buddhism by referring to the Song period Neo-Confucian scholar Zhu Xi's advice that each family should have a shrine. So the building of the architectural domestic shrine halls, the sadang, developed as early as the late Goryeo period in response to the demand made by Neo-Confucian officials to develop ancestor worship and to conduct Orthodox Confucian rituals. So a new law was promulgated to institutionalize the number of generations to be worshipped, based on social status and ranks for both the officials and commoners, generating such programs as the two documents that you can see on the screen, ancestor ceremonies for official literati households and system of domestic shrines. So ancestor worship was used by the Neo-Confucian scholar officials as one of the main vectors of social transformations in the early stage of the Joseon period by maintaining a strict patrilineal pattern on the emerging Neo-Confucian society. So following the rule of primogeniture, male primogeniture, it was the moral but also the social duty as a demonstration of his filial piety for the eldest son by the primary wife to perpetuate the ancestral line by performing appropriate ancestral rites. So the highly codified mourning rituals in Joseon Korea implied well-defined social and ritual obligations for each family member. So along with the caping, wedding and funerals, ancestor worship was one of the four main Confucian rites, sare, proposed by Ju Si in his Domestic Rites of Master Chu, the Zhuzi Tiali or Chuja Kare, during which the ancestors' vital force, the ki, was revived by the descendants during the ritual. So the offering to ancestors at specific times were a way to renew the link between the departed ancestor and the living. So the Chuja Kare recommended the holding of the following rites. So we're not going through all of them, but just to give you an idea of the number of rites that were conducted during the Joseon period. So the sacrifice to the four seasons, various rites for various ancestors. And of course on the death anniversary of the ancestor. However, it is as yet unclear for which type of ancestral rites these sadangdo, these shrine paintings were used. They were most probably used at the time of seasonal ancestral rites and on the death anniversary of ancestor, but this is something I tried to investigate further. So ancestor worship was mainly performed by the Yangban hereditary aristocracy. However, along with the Confucianization of society, commoners may also have performed ancestral rites. It remains speculative whether or not the more economically painted shrine pictures were used by destitute Yangban or by members of the lower social strata. And their record mentioning the regular organizations of the many prescribed rituals throughout a year that could be an economic drain, forcing even elite families to conduct rituals in what is called a purified room, the Changshil, within their own household, rather than in a separate ancestral hall. So I will now talk about the spirit tablet, which represent the seat of the deceased soul, the deceased ancestor. And it is important to talk about this tablet in order to understand better the iconography of the shrine painting. So it is believed that a human soul carries three souls, that a human carries three souls. So upon death, one soul departs to the other world, while the second remains in the burial, and the third one, the ancestor spirit, symbolically represented by a wooden tablet, is placed in a box where it will be worshipped during 4 generations, after which the tablet will be buried at the grave site. So the placement of the wooden spirit tablet in the ancestral hall, as well as its precise measurements, were recorded in ritual handbooks such as the Chuja Kare. So it is carved out of chestnut wood, and the dimensions and shape of the tablet followed codified ritual prescriptions deriving from a cosmological lore. So for instance, the round top symbolizes heaven, while the square base represents earth, as well as the 4 seasons. and its height represents the 12 months of the year, and its width the 3 periods of 10 days each of a month, and its thickness represents the 24 hours in a day. So the iconography of the shrine paintings is remarkably close to the description made in the ritual handbooks, which prescribe worshipping of up to 4 generations of ancestors, from the great-great-grandfather to the father, in descending order of seniority. So there is another reference in the chapter on ancestral shrine. In the domestic rites of Master Chu, it is recorded. So there is a description on how a shrine should be built. So it should be placed to the east of the main room. There should be 4 altars with the spirit tablet of the ancestors, so for each generation of ancestors. And here they mention the placement of the tablet from the great-great-grandfather furthest to the west, with the great-grandfather next to him, the grandfather next, and the father last. So this is, I will show you another picture that is more clear. So this is what you will see in a traditional family shrine when the 4 generations of ancestors are represented. So the first ancestors will be placed to the west and then moving towards the east. So this is in the case of 4 compartments and 2 compartments. And again, in that chapter of the Chujakare, it is mentioned that the spirit tablets are stored in a case and placed on a table. And I use this passage because it closely matches the sadangdo, the paintings. They mention a short curtain. They said that in front of the altar there should be an incense table in the center with incense burners and incense box on it. And as I was saying, the text matches closely the painting, or I should say the painting matches closely the prescribed ritual. So here you can, I'm sorry, this is the wrong, so that's the other button. So you can see the curtain, the food offering table, and the incense table. So now I will talk about the various categories of shrine paintings. So 4 main types of visual representations have been identified so far. The hanging scroll. So the paintings were most commonly mounted as a scroll with the 3 main subcategories that can be further distinguished. So this one is a painting showing a simple shrine structure with often a pine tree in the background. You also have shrines with, in front of which there is a ritual table filled with food offerings. So there is a number of such paintings. And finally, you have paintings with a single tiered or 2-tiered roof, standing on a platform. Oh, I'm sorry, it's always the wrong button. Standing on a platform and enclosed by walls. So considering the different types of visual representations, the Korean scholar Kim Shi-duk has raised the possibility that these paintings were used in different ritual settings. In other words, paintings displaying a table filled with food offerings did not require the presence of additional food offering on the actual ritual table, while those showing only a shrine may have been placed behind a table filled with offerings. So why do Some paintings have a table filled with ritual food, while others do not have any table with food. So could it be connected to a different kind of ritual, such as the visits twice a month of the family shrine to offer fruits, wine, and tea to the ancestor? So this is also prescribed in the handbooks, the ritual handbooks. A family should visit twice a month the sadang and offers fruits, wine, and tea. So it was more practical and economic to display a painting with painted food offering instead of preparing and displaying real food. So this is a question I've been investigating. Or was this type of painting showing a table filled with food offering used by families of higher ranks? Because actually we don't know how were these paintings produced and and who used them in what ritual setting. So all the paintings display in the center of the shrine a blank spot for pasting the paper slip carrying the name and the title of the deceased ancestor for which the ritual is being held. So the paper slip is burned at the end of the ritual. And marks left, so here, maybe, I don't know if you can see well, but here there are some marks here and sometimes here as well. Marks left on various shrine paintings show that the same painting was used more than once. Was the same painting used for all the ancestors in a family? So deceased married women also counted as ancestors, and deceased women ancestors are celebrated together with their husbands on official holidays and separately on the anniversary of their death. So could some paintings have been used more specifically for female ancestors? So this is another question that I'm investigating. So this is a three-panel triptych that is smaller than the scroll format. So these three-panel screens were also found with the image of a shrine in its central panel. But it is as yet unclear whether this format was used more particularly in a given region or whether a different chronological sequence accounts for it. It is believed that such a structure was developed during the later part of the Joseon period and was still in use in the early part of the 20th century. So generally speaking, this format displays in its central panel a shrine in its simplest expression with a blank spot. Again, we find the blank spot here that imitates the wooden tablets. And the flanking panels are usually decorated with the blossoms of flowers, most often peonies and lotus flowers, here and here. So moving to the next type of representation. So there are only two known examples of screen displaying a shrine. So this one is an 8-panel screen that comes from the Andong region, and it features in its center in the central 2 panels, a shrine which is flanked on the east. So the east is from the viewpoint of the north direction. So it is flanked by a square pot of peony flowers, and on the right, the west direction, I'm sorry, it's and on the right, in the west direction, by a round pot filled with chrysanthemums. So these are believed to embody the cosmological principle of a round heaven and square earth. As I mentioned, the cosmological principle are very important in this kind of shrine paintings. In addition, earth symbolizes the mother, while heaven represents the father. And in funerary context, right or the west is more respectful than left or east. That's why the tablet of the female ancestor is placed on the east or left side, while that of the male ancestor, as you can see here, is placed on the more respectful right or west side. So this is where the tablet of the male is on the west or left side. And this emphasizes the importance of the male lineage line. Now moving to the last category of image representation, and we can talk about, indeed, we can talk about the classification of this category of image, which is a bit problematic because, as you will see, it's a chair. So while most of the shrine paintings were painted on paper, there is a new category of image that emerges. So it is as yet unclear when this image appeared. So this is of the printed shrine image. This one is printed. And in point of fact, rather than the actual shrine, it is a black printed ancestral chair, the kyoi, in highly stylized form that is represented against a white background. And it features in its center a blank spot, and it's believed that it was to paste the paper tablets. So the high chair is often paired with a smaller incense table, which is placed in front. So such a piece of furniture was designed to carry the ancestral tablet and was placed behind the altar setting, as you can see on the picture to the left. So the increased demand for auspicious imagery, which acted as protective talisman, a pujok, at the time of the Lunar New Year, may have contributed to the development of block prints. So one may therefore wonder, what was the ritual use of such an imagery? Was this imagery used again in a particular region of Korea or during a particular period? Or was it used in a different type of rituals? And I also wonder if this kind of representation even fall under the category of shrine paintings, because it does not represent a shrine, but the ancestral chair. So again, according to Mr. Kim Shidok, along with the gradual simplification of rites towards the end of the Joseon period, the image of the stylized and monochromatic ancestral tablet, which was an essential component of the rites, as the seat for the ancestral tablet, emerged and greatly replaced the image of the shrine building. So when you look at all these paintings, what surprises the viewer is really the contrast between the austerity and protocol of Confucian rituals and the colorful and I would say almost joyful atmosphere emanating from many of these paintings with their vibrant colors and auspicious symbols. And the various elements displayed on the ritual table of the shrine paintings are often imbued with the auspicious meaning and wish for longevity and prosperity. And that may imply that they were not only used for remembering the dead, but also for the living. So recurring elements are fruit such as watermelon, pomegranate, and grapes, whose numerous seeds symbolize the wish for abundant offsprings. So this is an interesting passage in the Chuja Kare that is worth noting, as it appears to be closely related to the above. And so during the ancestral rite, at the time when the ritual food is removed, this corresponds to the 11th step, it is recorded that the liturgist addresses the presiding man, that is the descendant, the son, in the words of the ancestors, conveying blessing of fertility. So it is interesting to see that the text record the notion of fertility. So in conclusion, I would say that the ancestral shrine paintings of Joseon, Korea give us a rare insight on the religious practice of the elite in the 18th and 19th centuries, which put an emphasis on Confucian ancestor worship and its core value, filial piety. So ancestral rites were the paramount expression of filial piety. And the Sadangdo are a testimony to the enduring bond between the deceased ancestor and the living. While the strictly regulated ancestral rites were originally the preserve of the upper class, the varied iconography of this category of paintings reveals a gradual influence of the Minhwa painting tradition, perhaps signifying its wider use and diffusion among the common people. But it is as yet difficult to talk about the so-called Minhwa influence, since the context of production and use of the shrine paintings is as yet unknown. The conduct of ancestral rites and the number of generations to be worshipped are consigned in these handbooks, but this does not include the wide range of ritual practices depending on family social status, its economic means, and perhaps even its geographical origin. Another point worth noting is the gradual simplification of the various iconographical elements. So this is something that needs to be research further and confirm or not confirm, but perhaps the earlier paintings followed more closely the prescribed ritual text. That means the walls enclosing the ancestral shrine. So the walls and with an access stair, a pavilion on a platform with an access by staircase, and yes, so these would be considered to be the most ancient representation, and those of the later Joseon period are much simplified. Only the pavilion and the central tablet remains. So this trend towards simplification occurred in parallel with the relaxation of the ritual conventions towards the end of the Joseon period. Finally, a salient feature is the syncretic nature of these paintings, which, in addition to the auspicious elements of the Minhwa tradition, have merged Buddhist elements. Well, this one again, I wonder exactly what kind of painting it is, because the fact that there is a Buddha figure in the center is also quite mysterious. Why would there be such a representation, and can we call this a Sadangdo? I'm not sure about this terminology for this painting. So there are some Buddhist elements such as lotus flower, temple bell, and fish. So a further line of inquiry into this category of painting would be to investigate who produced such paintings and how such paintings circulated. So the woodblock printed images of the ancestral chair inform us that they were perhaps mass-produced and were perhaps distributed through some specialized shop, such as those selling items for funeral. So I was very interested in discovering this picture taken in the early 20th century. So there is still lots of research to be done on this category of painting. And so I have finished my presentation, but I would like just to take 2 minutes to show you a few more slides. The next point that would need to be further investigated is the iconography of the painting. For example, it would be important to study the architecture of the shrine building. What do they represent? Is it a family shrine or is it another kind of building? It would be important also the semantic, the meaning of ritual offerings and display of food, because there are different types of food display. And it's difficult to classify some of these paintings, such as these two paintings. Can we call them 사당도? Because first, I'm sorry, when there are too many. So can we call this, to the left, can we call this painting 사당도? First, is it a shrine? And it seems that there is no blank spot for pasting the paper tablet. So can we call this a shrine painting? This one to the right belongs to a private collector outside of Korea. And again, I'm not sure whether this is a 사당도. It is a painting representing a family shrine, but obviously it is cut. A part is missing, and there don't seem to be any paper, traces of paper pasted on that spot. So it is really unclear. It would be also important to investigate if any templates, wood block printing techniques. It would be important to investigate the way these paintings were reproduced. As you can see, these two different paintings obviously come from the same model, so they seem to have been copied from the same pattern. I mean, if you look at the Chinese character, even the Chinese character are identical. So obviously there was a template, a pattern that served as a model. It's also important to do comparative studies with the Chinese example. For example, I was curious to see that there are no ancestors represented on the shrine paintings of the Joseon period, unlike their Chinese counterpart. So also this is something to be investigated. In the Chinese paintings, you always have human figures represented, but not in the Joseon period paintings. Yes, and then finally, this is the last slide I would like to show. Also, it would be interesting to do comparative study with Vietnamese examples. Iconographically, the shrine paintings in Vietnam look quite close to the Korean shrine paintings. They share the same feature. The ancestral tablet, the altar table, the incense table are shown. And again, there are no human figures in the Vietnamese example like in the Korean painting. So I wanted to end on this. There's still to be further research need to be done on the 사당도. Thank you. I'm finished. Yes.
Yes. I would like to discuss